Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today, I've got with me Eddie Lincoln, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Equal Opportunity Schools. Eddie is passionate about issues of social justice and educational equity. He is deeply committed to closing the opportunity gap for underrepresented youth and is proud to be an active member of his community. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies from Seattle University and a Juris Doctorate from Thurgood Marshall School of Law. Eddie, I'm excited to have this conversation with you and learn more about equal opportunity schools and you and your leadership. Welcome to
Andrea,
the Voice of Influence podcast.
this is awesome. It's definitely a pleasure to join you on your podcast today. We've spoken before, and I'm just really thankful and appreciative for you to give me this opportunity, but also the work that you're doing in your community, but also nationwide, spreading the word of organizations like EOS and really supporting this type of work. So, in my book, you're is a hero, like I always tell my staff who go out and do this great work, because you're also part of the journey and story of Equal Opportunity School. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, would you tell us a little bit about it? What is Equal Opportunity Schools and how do you empower school districts for good?
Yeah, absolutely. So Equal Opportunity Schools is a national nonprofit based in Seattle, Washington. We've been around for roughly around 11 years. We laugh because most people don't know about our organization and the impact that we have had nationwide over that 11 years. But we're a national nonprofit that focuses on equity work. As you said in the intro, we focus on helping schools identify, enroll low-income and kids of color in classes that they sorely need and deserve to be in. We know right now there are nearly 3/4 of a million low-income and kids of color across the country. That's Asian, African American, low income white students, Native students who are all missing from these opportunities for a number of reasons that are not receiving those opportunities. And we were founded to help pave that way and provide access and opportunity for those young people.
Hmm.
We all know before you can achieve, you first have to have the opportunity. And the opportunity for a lot of these young kids are access to some of the most rigorous courses that our top students are constantly flooding in to go to some of our top universities around the country. And so we are here to help them and help school districts identify those young people who are ready for those opportunities.
Okay. So I am curious,
Mhm.
what kinds of classes are you talking about? And then how do you help them identify those kids?
Yeah. So the classes we're talking about are AP classes. We're talking about ACE program. You're talking about the IB program, and at times dual enrollment, depending on the jurisdiction. But the first three programs are national programs that have a national standard, and that's why we focus on them. No matter if you live in Nebraska or Seattle or Florida or New York, the standards are the same across the board, and those young people have to meet those standards to be admitted to those classes, but
Mhm.
also get admitted to college. And so that's why we focus heavily on those type of classes. How we go about our work is we like to say we're an ed tech company and becoming more of a tech company as we have grown out our
Okay.
infancy and matured as an organization. We have a comprehensive survey that we do to really help schools on the front end. And so we have a 77 question survey that really understands the mindset of the students. What are the courses that are challenging them? What are the behaviors? What are the things that are preventing them? Is it growth mindset, first generation, not enough adult encouragement? So we're really trying to understand who is this young person? As much as we're talking about changing school systems, it all boils down to the individual child. And so through the survey, we help schools identify young people who are ready right now. After we help and go through that survey, we will provide them what we call an equity pathways report. This is like a 3D overview of their school culture. What are the conditions that are working well in the school system? What are the conditions that they need to probably potentially improve to move more young people through the pipeline? And then we also provide that, as much as we're talking systems right now, we're also boiling it down to the individual child and through a couple of techniques and tools that we use, one called the Student Insight Card, that is basically a profile card on the young person and everything you need to know in one page for a counselor who typically in America has about 3 to 4 minutes to talk about career planning with a young person in most urban environments. This really helps them pinpoint those aspirations for young people, as far as individual classes, career choices. What are the things that are plaguing them and barriers that are stopping these young people from pushing themselves? And so we're
Mm.
trying to really simplify and operationalize equity for our school systems to aid and support our educators who are doing one heck of a job in a very tough landscape right now.
Right, right. You know, it sounds like part of what that does, especially these cards that you provide the counselors with, is it gives the kids a chance to, first of all, figure out what it is that they think and what they want, but then also be able to communicate that. It's hard to say that. I think it's hard for adults to say
Absolutely.
what they want, let alone a student who is facing all kinds of obstacles and dealing with being an adolescent. I mean, and talking to an adult, that's tough. So I love that. I love this vehicle for communication too.
You're spot on. You imagine going back to when we were 14, 15, 16-year-old high school students, our insecurities, let alone talking about our career choices, what the counselor who you really don't know actually. What we also do to really help with that, to negate some of that shyness or insecurities for a young person, is we in the survey process work with the students to find out what we call a trusted adult. Who is that adult in that building that you're close with? For me, who was an athlete in high school, after school, my practice didn't start till 5 or 6 o'clock. The person who was my trusted adult would have been our janitor. The person I knew who was sweeping the building, who was always there after school, who I would
Hmm.
talk with. We don't know in a child's life who is that adult who has that listening ear, who can support, motivate, kick them in the caboose at times, or gear them down the right path. We don't know, but the students will tell us in this survey process. And in the course of a year, we will pair that student with that trusted adult to be that opening and listening voice for them to steer them. We also will do what we call an adult training. So no matter if you're the counselor, the AP teacher, the general ed
Yeah.
teacher, principal, or the custodian, you know how to talk to that student to push them down a positive pathway. And that's one of the beauties of EOS. As much as we're using technology to drive an evidence-based practices, we're also talking about the human element
Hmm.
that you also receive, because we have what we call a partnership director. This is a staff member that actually goes out and works with these schools on a regular basis. So you're getting technology, but you're also getting the coaching and consulting aspect from our company as well. So we like to believe we're a one-stop shop for districts to really build an equitable model.
Hmm. Okay, so how do districts find you, or how do you get connected to school
Well,
districts then?
absolutely. So I would like to say we have this amazing communication strategy and everyone hears about us. We realize that very few people know about us. And we have served nearly 55,000 low-income and kids of color across the country, worked with over 800 schools. You're thinking, wow, they have a great marketing. No, it's actually just really word of mouth and referrals from partners.
Mhm. I
Um,
mean, word spreads fast when things are happening well in schools. I mean, that makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. And when you're working with 7 of the top 20 high school districts in America, and people are seeing their data, New York City, Chicago, San Diego, to name a few, and several in the South, and people are seeing their data that comes out, and you're seeing, 2, 3,000 more kids per year entering upper level class,
Mm.
77% of those young people passing at least one class. The word spreads pretty fast. And we've been very fortunate that our partners have stayed with us, and we have a renewal rate of roughly 84% year over year,
Mm.
astronomically high in any industry, because of the service and the results that our partners receive when they partner with us.
It makes me wonder. I don't know if you measure this, or how you measure this, but just the difference that it makes for the kids' level of confidence and their ability to see themselves in doing things that are beyond what they'd imagined before.
I think you're spot on. How it empowers young people to see something they didn't see in themselves at one point in time. And we
Mm.
do a lot of qualitative and quantitative data, but one thing that we always receive in looking at the student quotes is, I didn't know I was capable of this. I didn't know I could excel at this.
Oh, I
And
love that.
opportunity. And you get these, and one of the things that we do in our survey is we ask the students to write 2 or 3 responses. One of them is one thing you want the school to know about you that they don't know. And it may be first generation poverty, but then what excites you about this opportunity? And our staff goes through and reads these in their portfolio. And this summer we had a staff retreat and we gave out our student insight cards and all the student quotes. Everyone had three, and you sat around 75 people in a circle reading these student quotes. And you're seeing people cry, you're seeing people choke up, we're smiling, we're laughing, because we also, who do this work on a regular basis, also need to be inspired. And what inspires us is the imagination of young people and the sense of what's possible for them. And I think the quotes always brings that to bear. And we love sharing those with our superintendents, our school boards at the end of the year, so they could see and hear the students that are impacted by this much needed work.
Oh, yes, I love that. Um, okay, let me take a look at my questions
Yeah.
because this is good. Uh, do you have any particular, like, could you share with us a success story that you have in mind? I would love to hear one.
We have quite a few success stories. I think about, the the state of Maryland is one of our state partnerships. The schools who partner with us, we partner with roughly about 54 high schools throughout the state of Maryland through 13 districts. The districts and schools that partner with us seen an 8% increase compared to the schools who did not partner with us. An 8% increase of students accessing AP IB classes, a significant number. You're talking about thousands of young people. The same in New York City, where our first three cohorts seen an increase of 3,400 students compared to the schools who did not partner with us. And you're talking 55 schools in New York, and let alone those schools have seen roughly a 16% increase in participation in their AP classes. Let alone
Wow.
our district portfolio average of 77% of those schools have maintained their pass rate and or increased them, a significant number, because what most people would think, and what we hear a lot of times, is you're going to be adding young people who are not ready for these classes, who don't have the prerequisites. What these young people need is the opportunity. They are ready right now. The same way that a lot of times our more affluent students, we don't ask, are they ready? We don't look at their pre-test scores. We make the assumption that they are ready for these classes by their background, who their parents are, so on and so forth. With the young people we're talking about, they've gone through a survey. We've looked at test scores. Their teachers provide recommendations. The students are giving us comments. They're excited for these opportunities. So they actually go through more of a hurdle to get into
Mm.
these classes, but they're absolutely ready. So I think about the Charlotte Mecklenburg. We just had a staff retreat in Charlotte in their our organization retreat, and we had a panel, Charlotte Mecklenburg principals, who talked about the work and what has transformed them as leaders, but their culture within their building, with
Yes.
22 high schools. And you're talking about this college going culture that we are all in this together. And I think that's the beauty. West Charlotte hosted us, just hearing their principals and student panel talk about what they're going to do with this opportunity and the increase of young people who were taking college level courses. You're seeing these stories throughout. Yeah, I think of Frank Sinatra in New York City, and hearing their principal and assistant principals talked about how they were apprehensive about this work at first, not realizing how it was going to be transformed. This is a performing arts school who AP and IB weren't not an emphasis of the school. Yet they've seen an increase of young people coming to the school because of their robust AP IB program or AP program and the success. And it also added more young people who wanted to join the arts. So you're seeing this, we always say this snowball effect, that it impacts more than just the kids that we're targeting. It impacts the entire school culture. And that's why we have a 84% renewal rate. So we, as much as we're targeting a small set of young people in a school, a lot of times, it transforms your entire school and how you operate and having a college going culture. And that's what the data also shows along the way.
That okay, so there is a little initiative going around in our small community to get a new rec center
Hmm.
and make improvements to the community pool. And some of the comments that I see people making on Facebook are,
Hmm.
why should we all, it's a tax initiative that's coming up in the next election. Why should we all have to pay for something that only a few people use? And what you were just telling me here is one example of how making a difference for a few people makes a difference for the whole community.
Entire community. And the one thing, you don't know who's going to be impacted by that pool in your community. You may have the next
Yeah.
Michael Phelps that you don't realize is right in your backyard because you paved the opportunity for those young people to have something to inspire for something. You don't know how they're going to take advantage of it. Shawnee Davis, African American speed skater. If they didn't have a ice skating ring in his community, how would he ever been the first African American to win a medal in the Olympics? You don't know. Apollo Anto, Federal Way, Washington, in our backyard. Federal Way has a nice skating rink. You never know what someone's going to achieve once they receive the opportunity and the circumstances that will build and provide that opportunity for them.
And when you put people in a scenario or in an environment where it sort of has up leveled their expectations,
Mhm.
so whether it be the AP class
Yeah.
or whether it be a brand new building where they get to play tennis and basketball, I mean, it helps them see more for themselves. It helps them believe that, oh wait, people believe in me. I deserve something like this. Like I'm worth it.
Yeah.
I'm worth it. And when a kid hears that for an AP class, like you are worth what it takes to get you into that class. Like what a huge difference that makes for that individual. And then for the collective, because then they're also stepping up a little higher. They're contributing a little bit more. They're making a bigger difference in their own community because they're paying it forward again. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on with this for sure.
You're hitting on something really important. We always talk about this at Equal Opportunity Schools, and we share with our district leaders. Students, much like our own children at home, they rise to our expectations. If we set high expectations, they're going to meet that bar. If we set lower expectations, they're also going to meet that bar.
Yeah.
We as adults will set the parameters in which children will aim for. If we shoot for every single young person in our school system has to take an AP class, every single young person is going to take that class and exceed. If you set the bar that you want your child to go to college and you show them the steps how to get there, they will get there. And so it's really up to us as adults in our society to create high expectations for every single young person, no matter who they are, what their demographics, what their background is. If we show them the love, the nurturing support, and a pathway to get there, they will achieve greatness. The only reason they won't is because we haven't set them on that path.
Hmm. Okay, so I have a lot more questions for you around around business and leadership too, because in order to make this kind of difference,
Oh,
you have to have a, solid leadership, solid organizational structure, all the things that it takes to be able to make the difference. So, let's start with this question.
yeah.
Would you share a little bit of the journey and whatever you feel like is relevant?
Mhm.
How did you get to this point where you're the CEO of Equal Opportunity Schools?
Andrea, do we have enough time for that?
I
That's
know. Well,
the question.
we can make it a little longer if we need to.
I would say for me, and I'm gonna go back to my childhood. I grew up in a blue collar household. My dad had a small construction company, and I'm a kid who remembers him getting up at 5, 6 in the morning, going to work with paint all over him, dirty clothes, coming back home at 7 o'clock, the same way, and just always providing for his family. I had a stay at home mom. It's three of us in our household who took care of the house, and he worked. He worked tirelessly to provide for us. And so my mentality is I'm a doer. I get things done. Whatever I set out to do, we're going to accomplish it. And that was my father. And that's the upbringing that I have from my father, my grandfather, the people who were in my life. I was fortunate enough that I was a standout athlete, a basketball player. I wind up going to a really good high school locally in Seattle called O'Day High School, an all boys prep school. And what it did for me, it took me out of my South Seattle community and showed me how other people lived. Inner city African American male. I didn't have too many friends whose fathers were doctors or lawyers. I had a guy in my class whose dad was a general in the army. So the people I was surrounded with in high school and going to their houses, they lived a little bit different than we did in South Seattle. It told me is I'm their equal. And if they have this type of life, I want this type of life as well. And talking to their parents and learning how they got on this journey, I was inquisitive. I wanted to know, how did you have this house over here? How do you take these 2 or 3 international trips a year? I want that for myself, and I'm going to have that one day. And it was through my education. I got an athletic scholarship to Eastern Washington University and wound up transferring to Seattle University. And when I got to Seattle University, I had a professor pretty early on in my time. She was like, "Hey, we heard about you coming here. You were a big time athlete. Everyone's this buzz on campus about the basketball team." And she was like, "Well, I read your first paper and it's not going to cut it here. And you have to do better if you think you're going to make it at this university or even make it in this world. What you've done in the past is not our expectations." And it changed how I saw myself. And she pushed me in ways that I had not been pushed and challenged me in ways that I had not been challenged. Uh,
Hmm.
I had a religious teacher, Jody Kelly, who heard me speak at a forum on campus and says, "Wow, you should be a lawyer one day." And I'm like, "I don't know any lawyers." And I actually wound up realizing I knew one, but she had two African American men meet me after class to just talk to me about all the things I could do with my life with a law degree. And I wind up going to law school because of these men inspired me. I reached out to the one lawyer I realized I knew was Kevin Davis, and folks who in the legal community in Seattle know Kevin Davis is one of the most prominent African American lawyers in the country at the time before his passing. Venus and Serena Williams were some of his clients.
Hmm.
Kevin, and I didn't realize Kevin was aware. Kevin was my childhood basketball coach, and I didn't think anything of it. I just knew him as Coach Kev. But he would call me, and all through law school when I was in New York, he would sit down with me and keep inspiring me to keep pushing myself and how this could continue to change my life. When I'm thinking I was going to practice law or criminal defense, Seattle University at the time called me and told me they were launching this Seattle University Youth Initiative, very similar to the work of the Harlem Children's Zone in New York City, wraparound support for neighborhood communities, a K-12 education pipeline, immigration classes, housing, job training for families. And they wanted me to come back and potentially help. I applied, got the job, wound up never practicing law. And we set out to do some amazing work in revitalizing this local community in Central Seattle that encompasses roughly around 80,000 residents. And we did so well, we won a national award from Obama's administration. I think it's the National Honor Roll, one of the highest awards a university can win for service. And we were so proud because we did great work, but it was still more to do. But at that point, I helped build the programs in the K-12 system, and Equal Opportunity Schools was really where I'm at now, was looking to expand, and they recruited me away. And I went there as a partnership director and came to the organization. And the partnership director is our staff members that go out in the field and work with schools to close what we call the equity gap. I did that for a number of years. Our board chair, our vice chair, and our founder recruited me and asked me to take over basically our sales division. As a senior director over a period of time, I've done really well in the role and promoted up to chief partnership development officer for about 5 years, running our outside acquisition team. Really, the growth of the organization came during that period of time. I think when I took over, we were in about 130 schools to date, and now we've been in over 800 over that 5-year period. And then about 20 months ago, the board in a pretty quick transition asked me to be CEO. From the work that I've done, knowing the internal operation systems and things in the organization, that I was the right fit for this role. To be completely honest, I was like, what the heck are they thinking? It's not something that I wanted. It wasn't something that I aspired to do. Yet, and it was challenging. We were in our organization's history was at probably one of the lowest points when I took over. We had a toxic culture. We were struggling with our direction. Our strategic plan ended a year prior. We hadn't developed a new one. And during that period of time, in the last 20 months, we started rebuilding the organization by having a really strong strategic plan, really a 3 to 5 year roadmap of how we were going to impact the across the country, and let alone giving us direction what we're going to do internally. And one of the first things that I did is develop an operations department. We've never had one. How do we work and operate internally? How do we communicate internally? That was the first one. And then I set out to hire, where myself and my president and a couple of us were doing a lot of work and things not necessarily in our skill set. I set out to do 3 national searches for a vice president of technology, a vice president or a CFO, and a vice president of sales. And we hired folks and went after individuals who typically we would have never entertained or never entertained our organization. And so we had 3 high-level executives who came in to really help us streamline our internal processes, and internal communication direction. And so now we're at a point where this is probably the best moment in our organization's history after a tumultuous period of time. So we are at an amazing spot, not just financially. And we've received the two largest grants in our organization's history in the last 7 months. We have the largest staff we've ever had, more clients and schools partnering with us. And it starts, and I say this quite often, the foundation of our organization is we hire amazing people,
Mm.
not just talented skill wise. And it is the most talented group of people we've ever had. But one thing that I said when I took over as CEO, I wanted to hire people who had integrity, who had character, who were good human beings, who were kind, who wanted to work in team and collaboration. And one of the questions that you may get to is asking my leadership style. And I think what's important is operating and hiring people who operate like I do. I am a strategic thinker. I didn't know that before I came CEO. I am very firm and very direct in what I want and what I expect from people. I believe in transparency and openness. I believe in a level of vulnerability. You have to as a leader. And then ultimately, you have to lead with some love. And people laugh at that when I say that, or when I have a colleague who always talks about we have to continue to lead with love. In a society right now that people are being attacked in this cancel culture, we have to operate with a level of understanding, trust, and love for one another. If you can't do that, you can't build the camaraderie, the team that you need to do this type of work. Doing equity work and doing nonprofit work is an emotionally draining at times for people. It is hard because you're giving your heart and soul to the community and serving young people. If it's homelessness, whatever it is, it takes a lot out of you. And so for leaders, myself included, my leadership team, is we have to give people a grace at times when they're not always at their very best, or when they're struggling, when their personal lives come into play in the work environment, and really being a nurturer and a supporter of that. You know what? We are human beings and we all struggle at times. I mean, I think we have really transitioned as an organization to show up one another a lot more grace, and more importantly, a lot more love when we're struggling and supporting each other. And I think that if I'm proud of any one thing that I've done, and I've done some pretty cool things as CEO, I think bringing and creating a culture that we are a team once again as an organization. Most people know I was, most of the teams I ever played in, I was the captain. And when you
Mm.
become the captain, you're always the one who sacrifices for the team. As the CEO, I may be at the top, but that means I serve everyone else first. And I believe that. And I think for good leaders, and I've saw bad leaders who did not believe in that philosophy. My philosophy is you serve. I believe in servant leadership and shared leadership at the top. There's times that as the CEO, I need to make the final decision. And I don't hesitate when that's my time to make the final decision. But it's key for people to recognize when they are the CEO of their respective areas in this organization, and when it's their time to make the decision on what's on the best interest of the organization. And we do have that, and we're continuously building that so folks feel empowered to operate as owners and co-owners of this amazing nonprofit that we are stewarding towards the future.
Mm. Okay, so many things. First, first thing, I love it. The first thing that I wanted to ask is, based on what you just said about ownership, people
Yes,
feeling like they have ownership, and you made a lot of structural changes.
yes.
Um, what else did you do specifically to encourage everybody else to take ownership, to feel like they matter?
Oh.
That is a big, huge piece of what we research and study and then try to help have happen. And I love hearing I would love to hear what you did.
We live in a society of a hierarchy in work environments. I'm one who actually believes in a hierarchy. I think you need order, and the buck has to stop with somebody. Yet there's ways to empower everyone to be a leader. Not everyone's ready to be a leader. And what we realized, the structure in our organization prior to me taking over, the failures and the struggles we had is the failures of leaders. It wasn't the failures of our staff. It was the failures that our leaders, and myself, who was a cabinet member for a number of years in the organization, we did not empower our leaders, and we didn't teach them how to lead.
Mm.
You were promoted to EOS because you were really good at your job. Does not mean you should be a supervisor or a manager of people. And so one of the things, realizing that as I had and met with all the staff members in the organization, realizing one of the first things I had to do was help folks be better leaders. And so we set out for the first time organization, and it was not cheap. We hired executive coaches for every people manager in the organization. All 18 of them had an executive coach. We continue with this year, working and supporting by the University of Washington, who was doing the coaching. But that was one first step. And then two, meeting regularly about what our expectations are and what are going to be our standards that we live by. And so we created really 7 principles that the organization was going to operate by. And I can't think of them all off the top of my head, but the first one is lead with curiosity
Mm.
and inquiry instead of judgment. Laughter and levity should be part of our work environment. And so we really set that out to be the case within the organization and started with the leaders. And now we're seeing that you're seeing a year later, it really trickling down to every single staff member within the organization and feeling more comfortable as co-owners. There's also times where, and it really helped when we created our strategic plan. The strategic plan, the mission, new vision, strategic plan, down to our organizational goals. And once we got down to the 5 organizational goals, we call them 5 priorities, breaking down further to how the department and individuals, where we fell into the cruxes, our individual staff members did not see themselves in the department goals, the organizational goals, or the strategic plan. And what we've done this year is changed our structure of how we create our goals. And so people can directly see how they align to the mission and every
Yes.
single goal in the organization. The other thing that we did, and we've never really had one, and I said this from the first day, my first speech to the staff, is we're going to have an amazing performance management system. I hired the best HR director humanly possible through a colleague. I met her and talked on the phone on a Saturday. I was like, I love you. I can't hire you right now until we go through the interview process, but I love you and I want you to know that. And we wind up hiring her. The staff and everyone on the board really saw her vision for HR was similar to mine and our board chair. Human resources is there to support staff, not push people out of the organization. When we created a performance management system, it was a growth improvement plan. How do we help every single staff member grow within our system? How do we identify tracks for people to grow and improve as staff members in this organization? I want everyone to stay here for 10 years as long as I've been here. But if they don't stay at EOS, what is their path to grow on and do something bigger and better than themselves here at this organization? We have a track record of once you get to a cabinet level at this organization, most individuals have gone on to be EDs or CEOs. Why shouldn't that be the case for most of the people who come through this organization? If we can continue growing our staff to go out and doing bigger and better things outside of this organization, that has a greater impact in our society overall. And I pride myself to say that we're going to continue down that path. We're going to nurture that for our staff. And we look forward to seeing people grow out of our organization and going on doing bigger and better things in the future. But while they're here, we're going to invest in them being the best they can at EOS and in their personal lives and support them in that journey.
I love all that. Uh,
Mhm.
One thing that came to mind while you were talking is that the Surgeon General just came out with, and I was looking through my notes trying to find if I could real quickly find it. I don't remember. I don't. They just came out with recommendations for like a five points of things that people that workplaces need to focus on for healthy work environments, for mental health, and for well-being. And uh, growth, personal, being able to see the path for growth is a piece of it. Being able to feel like your voice matters is a piece of it. Having some flexibility and autonomy is a piece of it. Like there's 5 different things, but it sounds like you were able to, without that particular guidance, but I'm sure plenty of other wisdom, we're able to hit on a lot of those things, which when you have a healthy work environment and safety as well, for mental and physical safety, um, when you have a healthy work environment, then it does make people, it's sort of like people can get out of that fight or flight mode, um, and be able to think in bigger ways and respond in bigger ways and make a bigger difference and feel like what I like to call is like they have a voice of influence.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to have that when you're not, things are chaotic or you're not sure of something or whatever. But when you have structure and you have plans and you have um, communication and collaboration, like you're talking about, you definitely have so much more potential for
Yeah.
healthy influence. Yeah.
I think you're spot on. And I think one of the things that ties into that is having the right leaders in the right place, who recognize that and who want to lead in that capacity. And one of the things that we realized when I first took over back in March of 21 was we had good leaders. Some of them just weren't in the right seats
Yeah.
to be successful, and for their voices to be heard in an area that they were comfortable in. And so moving people around, asking, we learned, we surveyed the heck out of our staff. We had a lot of focus groups. There were things that I just didn't want to hear, in ways that pointed to my leadership over there. Even though I was not the CEO during a lot of, what transpired at times, I was still a leader in the organization, and it was humbling, and it hurt me to my core because people I cared about realizing that they were not being heard. And so, one of the things that we do is have a lot of avenues for people to give feedback, and then sharing with them what we're going to do and how we're going to improve. Be clear, we're an organization. We're not all things to all people, and there's only so much we can do to meet people's needs. But what we can do, and when it is in our power, we're obligated, I feel in my mind, to make this the best environment for people to feel successful, that they feel safe, that this is their home. And for me, EOS, for 8 years has felt like my home because I have been empowered to be a leader, to share my voice. And not everyone in our organization in the last couple of years have felt that way. And so what we have done is really gone above and beyond in a lot of ways to learn where we have fallen short, brought in outside consultants to help us and listen to us, and at times talk to our staff when they may not want to talk to the CEO directly, understandably so, about some of that. And, Ed First has been one of our key partners here locally in Seattle. Their team has administered the top survey. And it's really 13 indicators for us looking year over year on the milestone markers and some really key indicators of how we're moving the organization and how we're being transparent, how we're creating better professional development trainings for staff. How are we having better lines of communication? What is our career trajectory? And are we communicating that well? Where are we falling short? And I think, and then reading the staff quotes, and they're hard when you're the CEO, and a lot of times you're viewed as the organization. Those are always humbling, and that brings you back to reality, because it's also, at the end of the day, I'm the one charged to make sure this organization is moving forward and everyone feels safe and productive in this environment. And I think we're doing that now.
Okay, so you mentioned back when you were talking about earlier, you mentioned this the just how draining it is, how draining this work can be.
Yeah.
Um, and and then not only that, then that's for anybody doing this work. And then not only that, you're stepping into a leadership role where you have to take on so much. And I'm curious, what do you do to kind of fill your bucket back up?
Yeah. You hit on a couple things. One, you have to understand your personal values in a work environment. I have I have several executive coaches for different things that they support me on. And one of them made me do a value assessment of myself. One, making sure that you're in the right line of work. I would say that from the start. How I believe, and we're an organization that gives, and I pride myself on this, and I think our organization does, is we have one of the best benefits package, bar none, anywhere you're going to see, as far as time off, healthcare, you name it. We're there for our staff. Maternity, we just doubled the state average. We're looking to even grow more for maternity, because we don't treat our employees very well in this state when it comes to taking leave of absence for children. And so we want to do better and continuously do better. And so, one, we really pride ourselves on having an amazing benefits package to support our staff. We also have a very flexible work schedule in a lot of ways, where it's not a 9 to 5, and our schedules differ. I mean, I'm a person who likes to work at 4 a.m, and I want to be done by 2 o'clock to enjoy my life. And I believe in life outside of work, and I push my employees to use all their vacation, and they have a very hefty vacation package. I think we love having that. I'm a person who's an avid traveler, hiker, and photographer, and I love doing those things. So those help replenish me and having things outside of work. But I think what's also important for me in work is being inspired by my colleagues who are doing the work on the ground. We have a staff cafe. It is our partnership team. That's the team that goes out and implements our work in the field. They come back and give us stories from the field, basically a case study of what's working, what's not working, what's been successful, and they're sharing that out. And we also bring our partners in. We had a partner Dr. Thomas at Henrico County in Virginia came and talked to our board and blew them away about how important this work was, what the impact is in their school district, what our staff has done for them. Those are the things that really get you excited. Hearing the panel at Charlotte Mecklenburg, the 6 educators and the 3 students that run the panel about the transformational change and what has happened since they started working with us as an organization, you can't help to feel inspired at the end of the day, knowing you have that ability to have that type of change
Mm.
in the world. One reason I didn't practice law is when I realized I can only change one life at a time. I wasn't going to probably going to the Supreme Court, and one case at a time wasn't making the big enough difference for me in my life. Not to say anything against lawyers and what they do, but for me, I wanted to have a greater impact. At EOS, we have the opportunity to impact tens of thousands of young people. There are kids in schools that I recruited that young people would never know my name, but I advocated. I fought to bring their school on. My colleagues who go out and do the work in the ground advocated, pulled their names, sat down at different points in time and pushed the schools, uh, sometimes very hard, pushed them pretty fierce to push some kids into classes. But those kids excelled and did well, and they can go on and potentially have a first class life in this country and live the quote unquote American dream and get a college degree, get a house, get married, so if they choose to, And so at that point, um, that is the impact we can have at Equal Opportunity Schools. That's the impact we have with our community partners. It's the impact that we have with over 800 schools we partner with. And that's what gets you up at the end of the day, knowing
Mm.
you make that type of difference in this country.
Mm. Mm. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of a little bit rapid fire. I know that this is going to be hard to get in the last little bit of time we have together, but I do have some more questions I want to ask you regarding um, nonprofit leadership. Okay, so what role does the board play in your organization?
Our board, through some of the transitions that, we talked about and even offline, they really operated at times a managing board. And now they're transitioning to a governing board. It has transitioned to a governing board and more of a navigating board. I think during a period of significant transition, they've had to step in. Knowing me, knowing my understanding about the organization and the level of organization that we have built out in structures, the board has transitioned very rapidly to not being a managing board. And I, appreciate that very much, where it allows us to work in partnership. I'm fortunate enough, I have 11 board members now, two, because 2 stepped down, are now board chairs of other organizations. I have, I think, maybe the best board of any CEO I've talked to.
Mm.
And I don't say that lightly. We work in harmony. I have the most supportive group. I have actually, I would say, developed friendships with quite a few of our board members of how close we have become in the 2 years or so, nearly 2 years. I became the CEO. We see eye to eye, and they have a level of expertise that can really shape this organization. We have 4 board committees, between personnel compensation around HR factors, finance and audit, board governance, the executive committee. And so there are a number of things our board has a level of expertise that supports our staff when our staff needs that support. But I think what I really appreciate is the board recognizing the board lane and versus a CEO lane. My job is to run the day-to-day of this organization. Their job is to give me advice when I call on it, and guide me at times. But at the end of the day, it's my decision on the direction this organization goes. As long as it's in line with the organization's missions, the vision and strategic plan that the board approved. And I think that's the beauty of our board, recognizing the difference and not wanting to be involved in any of the day-to-day operations of this organization. And I sorely, appreciate, and let me see, not sorely, I very much appreciate them recognizing their lane and how they could support me, definitely being a young CEO. I think each of our board members actually have very different backgrounds for the most part. Well, I don't have a technology background, and 2 of our board members have a very 3 now have a very extensive background in technology. So their education of me, the certifications that I've gotten now and going through to really understand better our technology platform is really because of their guidance. And so they have poured, for some of them, 40 years of knowledge into me and pushing me in areas that I wasn't, well versed in. And I appreciate their level of understanding, yet patience for me as I continue to grow
Mm.
into being a great CEO. I'm a very young CEO, and these folks have a world of experience, and I very much appreciate the mentorship that they have given me and really the support, because they have showed a level of patience for me to get up to speed that I don't know if all CEOs would have gotten that type of grace from their board.
What would you say characterizes the partnership that you have with the board chair?
One of harmony, be honest with you. Um, Joanne, many people know her, very popular, prominent family. Her husband's the mayor of Seattle. She was a Microsoft exec for nearly 20 years. Um, we have known each other for a number of years prior to her joining the board, but I've known her family and husband since my early 20s. And Joanne operates with so much grace, and character. You're talking about patience, where, for a period of time and coming into the CEO role, it was building an organization, rebuilding an organization is a lot of down days. And she's always calls me at the end of the day, trust me, Eddie. And she's so calm. It's never as bad as you think it is. You not believe how bad it could get. And you're doing excellent work. I mean, she has shown me, I'm a workhorse. I am a doer. I believe if it's in front of me, it's a goal. It's going to get done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And her thing is, well, maybe it's better for you to slow down and just enjoy your life a little bit. You'll get there eventually. It's not, no one's pushing you harder than you're pushing yourself. And I think her calmness about where the organization was at and where we're going, and recognizing this is a marathon,
Mm.
really allowed me to breathe, in a way that for the first 6 to 7 months in turning this around, I don't think I did that very much. I was high stress, high anxiety, working 16, 18 hours a day, not sleeping, newly married. So I'm not spending a lot of quality time with my wife because I'm in the office. And between Deborah Wiles, our outgoing board chair, and Joanne, our new board chair, they really got me to calm down
Mm.
and realizing that EOS is going to still be here tomorrow. Worst thing is we didn't have money, we would be in trouble. And we've done a great job fundraising and bringing in new clients. And so we are extremely stable. And so I think that's what I really appreciate, the calmness, the direction at times, the support, the unwavering support that she has shown me, and just a level of patience for me being young in this role and her having 20, 25 years of executive experience, her knowing that these are the ebb and flow of a young CEO. And I very much appreciate her.
Mm.
And our outgoing board chair, Deborah Wiles, who most people know was the CEO of College Success Foundation for a number of years, and Gates, pretty high up in the Gates Foundation. So they have been two great individuals who have mentored me over the last really, I would say almost 2 years now in this seat.
What are the challenges and opportunities that you see for your organization here in the next year?
Yeah, this next year, we always call this a foundation year, and that's what we're calling it, where I think we've gotten over the hurdle, hired great staff, great culture, strong team team community teamwork here internally. I think now that we're transitioning to a foundation year is really solidifying ourselves in a couple areas. Our data technology is roughly 9 years old. Our client facing portal, we've done some maintenance, but we need an overhaul. And so we hired, as I said, a new vice president of technology who's going to be leading that overhaul of our entire data platform, and then ultimately leading to a new external facing client portal where all the school data resources is going to be more interactive, and really the staple between our organization and the school district we work in. And so that's going to be a really significant project and undertaking for us as an organization. So that's going to be one of the main things we focus on this year. The other thing I think continues to improve our internal communications is an intranet system. Continue to find ways to improve our internal communications in a virtual world that we live in, and less people in the office. It's harder for us to communicate. And so we need to make sure we have a central platform internally that we're communicating in one location. So we're always on the same page, from staff emails to announcements. Um, and so those are some of the projects that we're working on right now. another one that is going to be really significant, but it's a longer runway, is really looking at our programmatic offerings and what's
Mm.
next for us as an organization. We've done an excellent job adding and enrolling young people in school, but it's also staff intensive. What are going to be the things now that allows us to scale our work that's less staff intensive, and that allows schools to have more ownership on the work in the more immediate future? And so these are some of the things now that we're exploring. We have some ideas. We've done some market analysis and talked to a lot of our clients. But now we're going to go out and pilot some of these over the next year and a half to really determine what we can bring online in 24, 25 to the market.
Mm. Okay. So what do you see as some of the biggest leadership challenges of CEOs like yourself in the
Yeah.
next couple of years?
I think one of the biggest challenges is also, it's always going to be around funding. As funding, we're seeing a lot of major, amazing organizations all across the country who are folding up, who are sunsetting because they cannot raise money. We have a unique funding source where that's not been an issue. We have actually grown significantly since the start of COVID, but most organizations have downsized or collapsed. Several have approached us about mergers or taking over their organizations, and we're entertaining it, but we're just not there yet. So there's a lot we still need to do internally. But I think is, how can CEOs and organizations and boards put sometimes their pride and ego aside and say we need to work together, for one, to survival, and two, to have a greater impact in these communities. A lot of us do the same work or overlapping work. So how can we partner together? You do this better than us, and so you should focus on this, and we're going to take this lane and we're going to partner together. And we're doing that now. For the first time in our organization's history, we partner with some organizations out of Oakland. We're looking at some other ones in Chicago who do things with students of color, African-American males particularly, and another organization that really focuses on the counselor and teacher experience. These are things that we don't necessarily dive too heavily into as an organization, but yet are much needed with our clients. And so these are natural areas for the partner with other organizations now moving forward. And so I think CEOs and boards need to think about more collaboration across the board with like-sized organizations who can have a deeper impact for our communities we serve.
Mm. Great insight. What is one thing that you do in meetings that helps make those meetings successful? One thing. It's all, I'm just asking for one.
I don't know if I do one thing. I think what I'm really good at is grounding us in the work. Too often we allow adult issues to plague what's best for young people. And I'm very good at keeping, I would say, my team really focused on, we're about kids. Not the adult stuff we could talk about outside of this meeting, but we're about kids. And let's stay focused. And I think you do it through the power of telling stories about who we're
Okay.
trying to serve. And I think I do that pretty well. And the CEOs that I think I model and respect, one CEO locally to you, Bradley, who how we've met, is someone that I have admired how he leads. Through
Bradley
the
Ekwerku. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and through the art of stories, and who I've learned a lot from in the year and a half that I've met him. And so you're always evolving how you lead in those type of meetings, especially with folks who a lot of times who are your peers, who also need some inspiration themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then just a couple more questions. What advice do you have for some? Oh no, that is my last question. Okay, so no, I don't want to jump into that. My last thing I want to ask is, okay, what's your website? How can people get in touch or
Yeah.
be a part of what you're doing, or ask you to partner with you for their schools?
Absolutely. I would say this. I'm easy to get in contact with. I think you found that. I talk to any and everyone who emails me. We'll jump on a Zoom very quickly or a phone call home, no matter who you are. I had a parent who reached out through our website, and they're like, well, I know I probably won't talk to your CEO. And someone forwarded to me, and I called this lady right away. I was like, hey, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking to the CEO of the company. I was like, you sent us an inquiry, and I want to talk to you about how this could benefit your child. And so I'm very easy to get a hold of. So one, my email is eddie@eoschools.org. And so please feel free to email me anytime you want. You can go to www.eoschools.org to gather any information, and also send any web inquiries there for our team to reach back out to you. If you want to talk to me, our president, we're individuals who who have grown through this organization and understanding the power of relationships, and no one person, no group. We will meet with them, talk with them, because it's important to continue to build advocates for this work. We
Mm.
are 77 people in this organization. We can't do it alone. It takes parents groups, it takes community groups, it takes Rotary clubs, it takes Boys and Girls clubs. It takes individuals like you talking about this work to continue to shape the narrative of why these opportunities are sorely needed for young people to have a successful, sustainable life in our society.
Mm. Well, I'm just so excited for what your organization is doing, for the impact that you've had on your organization and the vision that you have for it, the intent to bring people along and give them a voice and make a difference in these kids' lives is just it's very inspiring. So what is your last little piece of advice that you would like to give to somebody who wants to have a voice of influence? Um, for on behalf of the nonprofit organization and voice of influence within a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, I would say this. And we had a guest speaker, one of our former colleagues who came yesterday. One of the things that people struggle with is when they're rejected from an idea. The one thing when you're leading a sales team, I was rejected. And I would tell you, only 10% of the schools that I talked with actually signed up with EOS. I would talk to 100 superintendents, and I would only sign up 10 out of that to partner with us. But it's about that 10. And I did not shy away from going back to the drawing board and, and learning from my mistakes. And so I would say
I'm
internally,
sorry, just a second.
oh,
I don't want to, my dog barked.
oh no,
Can
it's
you go
okay.
back to, it's about that 10 and then go from there
Yeah.
and I'll
And
mute
so
myself.
you're fine. You know, being really the director of a sales department, for the schools that we partner with, only 10% of them signed up with EOS. And so for every 100 superintendents that I talked with, met with, sat down with, only 10 actually signed up with us as an organization, which is seen in the field as a really high number, believe it or not. And so you have to jump back up on the horse very quickly after rejections. And so I say to people internally in our staff and our organization, other organizations, like, how do I get my voice heard? Be okay with someone not hearing you the first time. How do you do a workaround? Not going around your supervisors, but communicate to them in a way that they can understand and where you're coming from, not just with passion. Maybe it's evidence-based. Maybe it's the research you need to do. Maybe it's other colleagues you need to bring together who feel the same way to sit down with your supervisor or leaders within the organization. But I would say is when you do have that audience, make it impactful to that audience. Inspire them, whoever it is, that okay, and show the research and data. The one thing that I tell my staff is I am very tied to the emotions of our work and the morality of our work. But I also need to see the data and research to move things through to show me it's an evidence-based response to something that you're bringing to the table. That matters greatly. And I would say that to anyone out there is what is the research you're willing to do and provide the information in a way that the person receiving it can take it and digest it at that point in time. And maybe they don't at that moment. What is the right time to come back to them to share that information? If you can do that, you can make an impact in your organization. We have a saying, you can be the leader from any seat you're in this organization. You can be the CEO of any seat you're in this organization. And I think I pride myself. I wasn't always at the top of the pyramid as CEO. I was just anyone else in the organization. But I got the ear of the CEO, the ear of different times with the board leaders and different things to push things that I knew was going to make a change and a better impact for this organization. And I recognized my audience and how I needed to communicate to that person at the right time to make the change that I thought this organization needed to make to be successful. And they heard me, and we've made changes. And I've led for any seat that I've sat in prior to being CEO.
Oh, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to visit with you today, Eddie, and hear all about schools. And I'm excited, and thank you for being a voice of influence for our listeners today.
Absolutely. This was a wonderful experience. And hopefully we get the opportunity to work again sometimes here. And I would come on your podcast at any time. You had excellent questions
Awesome. We'll
as
do
well.
it again.
I love that.
Okay. Thank you.